It's time to enhance the relationship between expertise and impact, between knowledge and application. Welcome to a journey of discovery and empowerment. Welcome to All Physicians Lead, the Forbes Books podcast that highlights the critical leadership role that all practicing physicians take on every day. Here's Dr. Leon Morse.
My guest this week is a distinguished physician, dedicated military leader, and lifelong public servant. Retired Lieutenant General Ron Blanck rose through the ranks over a storied 32-year military career from battalion surgeon in Vietnam to the 39th Surgeon General of the United States Army. Since retiring from active duty, he's continued his service, teaching physicians around the globe and advising on critical issues like bioterrorism, preparedness, and response. Dr. Blanck, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and great to be here.
That is really, really great to have you. I share with the audience that we've known each other for over 30 years, and it's always impressive to think back how quickly that passed.
True.
So I wanted to start out with a quick, easy question, I think, and ask you, what was your motivation to get into medicine? And then part two, to get into the senior leadership positions that you subsequently held?
To get into medicine was a late decision on my part and had to do with me being a first volunteer and then paid ambulance driver at my hometown local hospital during my college years. And I realized that I really liked that and thought, my gosh, I need to switch my major, which I was constantly switching anyway, and get serious about going to medical school, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do. Got through, did my internship, then walked down to the recruiting station and said, I want to come in the Army. Didn't really ask this, but I thought I'd answer it anyway. And I said, but I want you to promise that you'll send me to Vietnam. He actually came around from behind his desk, put his arm on my shoulder and said, son, we're going to make you very happy. And so
we can do that, right?
We can do that. So I learned a lot about the military and to appreciate it in Vietnam. And then I came back and was at Walter Reed, did my medicine residency, stayed on staff. Throughout my career, I've always been proud of being first and foremost a clinician as well as a military officer. But when I went over to the Uniformed Services University from being on staff at Walter Reed as the first assistant dean for students, and then as chief of medicine at Brooke Army Medical Center, I realized there was more to what I could contribute and more that I was interested in than clinical medicine and teaching, the academic side of it. And so then I really thought, I'd like to get into some of those leadership roles and make a difference at a higher level. And of course, everybody on the receiving end says, well, I could do better than those people. You want to become one of those people.
We've all said that, right?
Yeah.
That's terrific. And in the decades that I've known you, I and others have always been impressed by your humility in spite of the incredible accomplishments that you've had.
Thank you.
I've always liked the idea that fundamental components of leadership are caring, communication, and consistency. How did you remain so humble and personable? And was that a conscious part of your leadership model, or is that just you?
I think it's more me in that I've always, in anything I did, have relied on others. I've realized that I'm part of a team, whatever my role was, and no one person can do it all. And keeping that in mind continues to make you humble. When you look at the challenges, whatever your role is that one faces, you have to be humble because they're daunting. And so you chip away at them, you rely on others to chip away at them, and hopefully you make progress. But I think it's that thinking of you being part of a team that is key.
You had touched upon your service with the Uniformed Services University, the Federal Military University in Bethesda, Maryland, on the Walter Reed campus that trains military, public health service, and Coast Guard doctors, nurses, dentists, allied health professionals. We both have had a long affiliation with the
Right.
Uniformed Services University. Tell us more about why you've invested so much of your time and energy in that institution for more than 40 years, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. It opened with its first class in 1976. Actually, the institution traces it back to the passage of the legislation authorizing it in 1972. The whole purpose of it is to ensure a steady stream of physicians and then eventually graduate nurses, dentists, and so forth into the military service, emphasizing both the clinical skills, but also the military skills officership, if I can use that term. And that has to do with behavior, with leadership, with the concept of service. The school was founded on those kinds of principles, and as it's expanded, it's remained true to them. They turn out superb physicians, researchers, graduate nurses, etc., but they really also emphasize the military aspect of it. To be a military officer is something analogous to, different from, but complementary to being that clinician, in that both emphasize service above self, looking at others, taking care of people, that kind of thing. So I've always felt that the mission is almost unique in those kinds of institutions. Uniformed Services University is a health university, but it operates as much, if not more, like a military academy than a civilian medical school.
And you've certainly lived those dual service roles throughout your career. After retiring, most recently you're with FAMR.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The Education Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates, ECFMG, was established in the 50s to verify the credentials of international medical graduates coming into this country, because they had some bad experiences with that. And so as that's grown, there was a realization that we not only are looking at IMG's international graduates coming into the U.S., but we want to give back something to the global community. And so FAMR, the Foundation for the Advancement of International Research and Education, was formed in 2020 to focus on medical education throughout the world, so that we could help in some way foster quality education for physicians who not necessarily coming to this country, who would stay in their own country and hopefully be better trained with better health outcomes. So that mission has grown. We now do world resources, where we maintain the listing of all medical schools throughout the world. We have directories such as that. We have international medical graduate support activities. For example, we did an electronic health record module of an introduction to the EHR in the U.S. for those international physicians coming into this country. And one of our real core programs is 10 regional institutes plus one in Philadelphia that does faculty development, competency-based curriculum development, project management, and leadership training, a 2-year program located at universities in China, Indonesia, India, Africa, and Chile. Uganda specifically in Africa. And so, but you asked how I got into it. My success.
How'd they get fortunate enough to get you in their grip? That's what I want to know.
Well, thank you. My predecessor had some problems and left abruptly. Longer story. So I had been on the ECFMG FAMR board for years and chaired it the last several years. The CEO called me and said, "Hey, we need an interim. Would you be interested in coming to do that?" And as I'm saying, I have to ask my wife. She's in the background going, "He'll take it. Don't worry." I'm not sure what the message is there, but so I started getting into it. And of course, much of the work can be done remotely, but I'd go to Philadelphia where the offices were and continued to try to provide that leadership. I don't have the expertise that my staff does. They are wonderful. All I do is get them needed resources and focus and direct them a little bit, and try to set priorities. And here's how we manage these kinds of things. So it's a great opportunity. And in the middle of this, after a couple of months, the board directed that we merge ECFMG and FAMR into a single foundation now called IntHealth, with the two elements, ECFMG still doing what they've done, that is the verification of credentials and administering English exam and the national board exams, and then FAMR doing the institutes and the other activities as I've described. But now we're part of this single organization, and we can do things together and utilize the expertise on both sides that we weren't doing before. And that's one of the things I'm the proudest of being part of, moving those two institutions or elements closer together.
That's impressive. Two things I wanted to point out there. One, your leadership model that you described: hire good people, give them direction, give them resources, and get out of their way. That's a really, really cogent and effective method. And the other was your initial comment about accepting the position, or your wife accepting the position on your behalf, of the gentleman who had retired not too long ago. And his wife said, you need to go do something because our vows were for better or for worse, but not for lunch. And so I was wondering how that played into that, but maybe we'll ask her later.
Well, now that I'm about ready to leave the position, they've finally begun a search. And they said, 3-4 months, it's going to be 14 months by the time I leave. So I think Donna's already put it in job applications at Walmart and for certain hosting positions at restaurants and so forth.
So you'll definitely continue to use your talents to people's benefit. So speaking of that, with all of the things on your plate as you've gone through your storied career, back in the day when you were promoting me to major, I don't think work-life balance was a phrase that anybody used or cared about. You just kept your nose to the grindstone. But that said, you've stayed incredibly healthy, active. What did you do, or what advice would you have to folks now that have 14 irons in the fire to maintain some semblance of reality?
Well, you said something interesting, healthy and active, because what you are able to do as one goes into various stages of retirement or career transition is to be as active and healthy as possible. So what's health mean? Well, all the kinds of things, watch your blood pressure and so forth and so on, but it definitely means don't gain weight, continue to be socially interactive, don't be lonely, don't withdraw, and get involved in things. So the difficulty is to know where to stop in getting involved, because you want to have, as you pointed out, that balance of continuing to contribute, continuing to try to make a difference, and that keeps your brain active and all of that. But also then take the time to do things that you like. You may want to travel. You may want to go on a sailboat more. I just got back from hiking in Wales with Bill Friedman, one of your neurosurgery colleagues. And so we did 8 days of hiking, about 75 miles on the coast of Anglesey Island. And that's great fun. You have to do things like that, given that you're able to, of course, and that gets back to the health issue. So you try to maintain that balance as much as possible. And then, of course, I gave a talk on longevity at the Army War College. So I went through the 10 factors that you could think of them that correlate from one study to longevity. So it's blood pressure, it's weight, it's exercise, it's get your flu shot. It's don't drink, or if you do, moderately. It's don't smoke. And then I had to admit that I have the occasional cigar. I quit cigarettes in Vietnam. I've never smoked one since, but occasional
guilty on this end too, yes.
So sometimes is good for the soul. So there's a balance too. But back to what surprised me and shouldn't have, as to the top two things that correlated with longevity: close family and friend relationships, number 2, and social interaction, number 1. Talking to the mail delivery person, the server in a restaurant, people standing in line at the airport, that kind of thing. being outgoing and having that involvement is so important. And men tend not to be as good at that as women are.
One of the things that you highlighted there was having a purpose, having something that keeps you getting out of bed in the morning and keeps you wanting to stay active and engaged, usually with people, as you also mentioned. What sort of purpose, you touched upon being a physician very early on, what kept you going and advancing in the career progression that you had?
So it was, and I say this all the time about the military. People ask me, son wants to, daughter wants to consider the military. I'll say, let me tell you something about the military. It provides structure, focus, discipline, a purpose. And it's something that if you go into with anywhere close to the proper attitude, and today we have a volunteer military, so you're going to go in with hopefully the right idea. It is a series of opportunities that are unmatched in any other field that I know of. Most of us, upon finishing, let's say, college or postgraduate work, or in any profession or occupation, we kind of get into, not a rut exactly, but into we're settled down, here's what we're doing, and you have difficulty getting out of that if at some point you want to change. The military, not so much. No, the military says, no, we want you to look at other things, explore other opportunities, find out about things that might be something that you would be interested in and could contribute in as you go through your career. So for me, it was every job was new and different. Every job was an opportunity to learn, to hopefully contribute, to try to get good at. Sometimes in the military, we move people too soon before they get as good as they could have in a role. But the military is nothing more than a series of opportunities. Well, it's much more, but it really is a series of opportunities.
One of the things that struck me as I got a little bit older in the military is highlights something that you just said about coming into a new position, expanded scope of responsibilities, just maybe feeling like you just got your feet on the ground and then you're reassigned. And, I didn't get to the general officer level. Tell me something about that. When you get to, 2-star, 3-star level, you have thousands, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of facilities, billions of dollars in budget. And you're in that position for 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. How does that play out, and how comfortable do you feel like you get being the CEO of something so large?
You don't get comfortable. Fortunately, most of the flag positions, at least in the medical departments, and it's certainly true in the Army, I think a tad less true in the Navy and the Air Force, the tours often are 4 years. And 4 years is a good time. Typically our commands are 2 years, which is too short. 4 years is enough to learn about it, realize what needs to be done, figuring out how to do it, and then putting it into place with some kind of follow-up. So when I commanded Walter Reed, it was 4 years. When I commanded the U.S. Army's Medical Command, it was 4 years. As a brigadier, I just did 2 years, but that was head of the Medical Corps and the policy job in the Office of the Surgeon General. So that was okay. But the commands were 4. Now, my commands in Berlin, 2 years, Frankfurt, 2 years, not long enough. I could have clearly stayed longer and done more, but it was time to move. So I did.
Onward and upward.
Upward, yeah. Right.
So during all those assignments and beyond into retirement, many of us have looked up to you, emulated your behavior, tried to be like you. I mean,
wow.
Face it, and I'm not the first person, I hope, that's relayed that information to you. While you were going through all these positions, what did you think about mentorship, developing the next generation of leaders? What would you tell leaders now to focus on to try to bring the next generation along?
Mentoring is clearly something that we learn about in the military, and hopefully everybody does, some better than others. But there are other things that we had put into place for health professionals coming into the military, in particular. The infantry and the artillery and the engineers and signal, they do it better than we did. We actually had in place a pretty decent basic advanced course that would give military skills, leadership training, and the rest to newly minted physicians or nurses or dentists, or often who come in at a senior rank and they don't know what they're doing at that rank as far as a military officer. This taught them that. And then we had other leadership courses. I'm a big believer in learning leadership, certainly by observing, but there are ways to teach it too. And so we had pre-command courses. That's pretty typical and traditional. But we had developed pre-DCCS courses, pre-Chief Department of Nursing or nursing DCCS courses, pre-DCA courses, pre-division surgeon courses, all sorts of things out of the Academy of Health Sciences, the AMED Center and School, now under TRADOC, that really provided a lot of that. That's been lost. And I just talked to a group who's been contracted by Health Affairs looking at the military health system and talked about leadership and how we've lost a lot with all of our personnel cuts and the rest, budget shortfalls, et cetera. And we need to really concentrate on that again, I think. And we have the history of it. We know how to do this. We just need to do it. Will that happen? I don't know. I think that's something that's going to go in their report. So leadership is something that should be continuously taught, and you can do it in that formal way, but then there's all the informal kinds of things. All flag officers used to go to General Olmert's, the Center for Creative Leadership, which was the best leadership course I'd ever been to. I don't know if they do that anymore. I think not. And that's a loss. So we need to pay more attention to it. Uniformed Services University, by the way, has stood up the Griffith Center. And Fred Lau is a mutual friend heading that and trying to focus on how we can better incorporate leadership training into the curricula of all of the colleges within the Health Science Center.
Well, my ears have perked up with a lot of your comments, but particularly this line of thought, as we've talked about numerous times over the decades. The concept with all physicians lead that we've talked about is that not just physicians who are in designated leadership positions like a deputy commander for clinical services you mentioned and hospital commanders, but every doctor is really influencing behavior to achieve a desired result, fundamental definition of leadership every day. So in terms of preparation for those later leadership roles and in terms of being able to do your everyday job as a doctor, influencing patients, influencing families, influencing nurses, teammates, colleagues, residents, what sort of advice would you give to all doctors? You mentioned that there are many different ways to learn leadership. Are there things that you've used on your own outside of those formal channels that all physicians could benefit from?
Well, there's certainly publications and lots of reading lists. The advanced course used to have that. I don't know if they do anymore or if people even still go through the advanced course. I know they do the basic, and we used to have them go through up to CAS Cubed and then Command and General Staff, which both teaches things about the military that it seems to me anybody who has a career in the military ought to know. And health folks tend not to have that depending on their background. But it teaches leadership too. And the advanced course particularly emphasized that as an officer, let alone a physician or a nurse or as an officer, you are a leader, period, end of discussion, and you need to behave like one. What does that mean? Well, first and foremost, you need to set the example. Be clear in your communication, be transparent, have great integrity. That goes back to set the example, I suppose, and just live what you're trying to have your folks do. Be at the front of whatever it is, say in patient care. Don't you take the front parking place, silly example, put handicap places there, and you park back, where your staff does, and walk. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. So
get more steps into that fitness that you talked about earlier.
The fitness thing too. That's right. Yeah. The only reason actually that I do long distance hiking, in Wales or Scotland or the Appalachian Trail is it forces me to stay in shape because I'm normally lazy. So.
I think that's a human condition. We all have to force ourselves at times.
Yeah, exactly. So leadership is all of those kinds of things, and you just need to get in the habit of practicing it. Learning about it, back to that question, there are also other places. The old American College of Physician Executives, now it's changed to the American College
Association for Physician Leadership.
Physician Leaders, that's it. Yeah, or leadership, yes. And I've taken some of those courses, did so back then. But boy, I'll tell you, the military knows about leadership, and if we have it set up right, we will provide that information to folks. But if we don't, there's plenty of ways to go out and get it themselves.
Awesome. So when you went through your military experience, how do you think that shaped what you ended up doing after retirement?
Well, it clearly gave me the background and experience to want to go to as close a like organization as I could find. And I'll back up to after I got back from Vietnam, dating Donna, and she says, "You want to stay in the Army? Why?" I said, "Because I can take care of patients without regard to their ability to pay." I'd go back to where I interned, and they would be talking about what code can we use to get the best reimbursement. I don't care. I don't want to know that stuff. I want to know how better I can take care of patients. And so that's why I stayed in the Army. It wasn't about profit, in terms of dollars. So when I retired, I looked around and I decided to go to a university, and was fortunate enough to be selected to be the president of the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth for the same reason. They pay you, you get to lead, you get to work with people motivated. It's an educational institution as well as patient care place. And so I was happy to go there and be part of that. I found that it was less focused on service than I had hoped. And I don't mean this critically about a lot of people, because there were wonderful, wonderful people there. But academics can sometimes be brutal with a lot of politics that we have it in the military too, but we tend not to have it anywhere to that degree. What I didn't want to do was go to a large health system or a large consulting firm and get into that. I really wanted to be at some place that I thought would focus more on service rather than profit.
That's awesome. It's great to hear how you continue to thrive, transitioning from military to civilian life. A good example for all of us, as tough as it can be sometimes to take off the uniform. We'll dive more into these and other topics soon, but first a quick break. When we return, former Army Surgeon General Ron Blanck will share invaluable leadership insights that anyone can apply.
Never, ever, ever shoot the messenger, because if you do, you won't get the message. And you want the message. And I used to tell people, I love when you tell me how well things are going. I value when you tell me what's not going well, because then we can do something to fix it.
This has been All Physicians Lead. We can all be better leaders, and our teammates and patients will be the beneficiaries. Go to allphysicianslead.com to unlock your potential, sharpen your impact, and elevate your journey. All Physicians Lead with Dr. Leon Morse is a production of Forbes Books.